Are we done? Yeah. Hello, everyone. Do you hear me? Yes. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So before starting the session, these are our rules for today, so you can read them. And now I'm going to give the floor to the moderator, Dr. Xian Hong. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, and good morning. Bonjour, tout le monde. We are so happy to be here, and thank you to EuroDIG. Thanks to the Council of Europe for hosting this wonderful event with all of you. Yes, we are here at the networking session of the IGF Dynamic Coalition on measuring digital inclusion and gender equality. Today, we are focused on the fascinating discussion on exploring the frontier technologies for harnessing public digital goods and also for sustainable development. We are having a very strong panel of participants and speakers in the room and also online. We have very vibrant online participation actually. So let me start by showing a video message from Mr. Guilherme Canilla, the newly appointed director of UNESCO in charge of the digital inclusion policy and transformation. So may I invite my colleague Yi Chen from Zoom. Could you please display the video message for Mr. Canilla? Thank you. Yeah, we see the video, but no sound yet.
Hello, everyone. A real pleasure to be addressing you, although remotely. I would have loved to be in this fantastic city of Strasbourg with you. I do hope you are enjoying the fantastic wine and the great food. But here is to discuss the challenges of the information ecosystem. Thank you, EuroDIG, for accommodating this discussion, always a great partner of UNESCO in general, IFAP in particular. Needless to say, I think we all agree, I can't think in another moment of the recent international history of such levels of complexity, and particularly for the information system. So here, there is no other way. We need to find the correct path to leverage the opportunities and to mitigate the risks. Easy to say, not easy to be done. However, we have interesting tools in place. This year, there is the 20th review process of the World Summit of Information Society. We are just starting the implementation of the Global Digital Compact. We have 5 years to finish the 2030 agenda. Only those 3 elements are absolutely vital for our conversations, for your conversations there. And I'm glad to see that the partners are really facing the challenge. In no time, this dynamic coalition reached at least 60 members from different angles that are particularly relevant for this discussion. And this multi-stakeholder conversation is absolutely vital for moving ahead. So thank you, every one of you, for participating, for joining the Dynamic Coalition, and for making sure that we can share knowledge and also that we can agree to disagree. We don't need to all think alike in this area, but we need to produce a content that helps the different stakeholders to move forward. A quick message on the last IFAP meeting, the Information for All program. UNESCO, the multilateral diplomacy is also a relevant point in this conversation, and this is our role, to be an honest broker, to be a convener that puts in touch governments, our diplomatic members, the diplomacies of our member states, with the other relevant experts and organizations that joined this council a few weeks ago, and different things were able to be approved, including the UNESCO IFLA Manifesto for School Libraries, which is a very, very interesting, concrete suggestion to advance what we are discussing here. Next, very briefly, we are discussing a recently launched issue brief of IFAP on quantum technology with a clear human rights-based approach, and this is central to discuss the new technologies with this approach. So I'm very eager to receive your feedback on this joint issue brief with other partners that are also participating in this discussion. And we are opening a consultation about a new issue brief on libraries and how libraries are essential for this process of digital inclusion. Final word, for advancing on policies, we need to have evidence. And for that, for example, the UNESCO Internet Universality Indicators, they have been for the last decade, yes, we are celebrating this year the 10th anniversary, they have been an important tool for providing evidence for governments and other stakeholders on how to improve internet policy everywhere. It is not only about standard setting or only about measuring and evaluation. It's also about advocacy, because with these standards, the different players can pitch a better internet. And what is a better internet? Rights-based, open access and multi-stakeholder, everything that is there, internet universality. Thank you for your attention. Wishing you fantastic discussions these days.
Thank you very much. I can sense the strong passion and the support, inspiring message from Mr. Canilla. Following what he has said, I'd like to briefly present a very short PowerPoint to give more details about those key outcome program he has just mentioned. So, Yichen, could you please share my PowerPoint? Thank you. By the way, my name is Xian Hong, program specialist at UNESCO. I'm working on the Information for All program. Next slide, please. So, as Guilherme mentioned, that the multilateral diplomacy is still important in the multi-stakeholder ecosystem. Our program was created in 2001, so we are having the 25th anniversary in a year. So it's a high moment to reshape and to revive the program to tackle the emerging challenges. We are hosting 6 working groups, having more than 100 experts from 5 continents. We have 24 national committees created by the national governments to support the IFAP priorities. Next slide, please. And the 6 priorities of our program, as you can see, information for development, information literacy, multilingualism, information accessibility, information preservation, information ethics. They are so well contributing to the forthcoming implementation of a global digital compact, which shares the goals to close all digital divides, to expand inclusion, and to foster inclusive digital space, advancing the interoperable data governance and also the AI governance. So we really look forward to playing a bigger role to contribute to this big process of GDC implementation, which is one of the hot subjects in this EuroDIG. Next slide, please. In this context, IFAP, jointly with our co-founder, Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, GDIP, we have a speaker representing GDIP online as well. Then we have jointly with several key organizing partners, including International Federation of Library Associations Institution, IFLA, including EuroDIG, and LOEF, and also Sciences Po, as you can see from the screen. So all you need to do is to just scan this QR on the screen. You can submit your membership form to us so we can include you in this big process. We already received more than 60 members since creation from last year. We can see that's just such a strong call for having an evidence-based approach to advanced digital inclusion at all levels. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So far, we have received more than 52 subscribed members from our web link. You see, the members came from everywhere. We have 8 universities, institutions from Latin America and Caribbean. We have more than 20 from Europe and North America. We have 15 members from Africa, and then 14 from Asia Pacific. I hope many of you are already connected online or maybe in the room. I look forward to having more conversation with you. So next slide, please. And we have already created a database of these members of the dynamic coalition. We are planning to have the regular online meeting and also this kind of networking occasion at different global events, including EuroDIG, including maybe IGF, WIS, etc., to we can have more opportunity to strategize and synergize together. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are the members from in Europe and Latin America. Next slide, please. That's what I mentioned, that with, nobody can tackle a single party on the big challenges of digital inclusion. So through this networking efforts, we have been able, we are there only for a year, but we have been able to make the dynamic coalition functioning in a number of ways, such as we have the webinar on the gender inclusion, gender transformative policy jointly with GDIP last year. We have been showcase our work at the IGF last year, at the North African IGF and EuroDIG last year as well. Next slide, please. And jointly with partners, we are developing new research to look into the frontier technologies and emerging issues. For example, at this EuroDIG, I'm very proud we are going to launch this new issue brief on the human rights-based global governance of quantum technology. Will be the next frontier technology in the horizon to impact the entire ecosystem of internet and artificial intelligence. So with this slide, I'm finishing my brief introduction. Now we are going to have two semantic presentation to showcase the outcome from dynamic coalition members. So the one I'm inviting Ms. Shamira Ahmed. Are you online with us?
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Okay. Hello, Shamira, and also Ms. Constance Bolomer. Are you there with me? Okay, if not there, let's continue with Ms. Shamira Ahmed. She's one of the co-authors with Ms. Constance Bolomer from the Tech and Global Affairs Innovation Hub at Sciences Po in Paris. And even though you're not there, Constance, I'd like to thank your strong support to initiate and complete this important issue brief. And also Ms. Shamira is Executive Director of the Data Economy Policy Hub. You are the leading author of this important research, and congratulations for having conducted such an excellent edge-cutting research into these new issues. So could you please present the major findings and recommendations from the research?
Yes, thank you for that warm introduction, Xianghong. I will share my screen.
Yes, please go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Could you try again? Actually, I have brought many hard copies in the room, so for your interest, you can just have one.
Can you see my screen?
No, but I think we can see you are sharing your screen, and no, can you pick your PowerPoint?
Yes, I can see the PowerPoint on my side.
But we cannot see your screen, your PowerPoint. Maybe try again.
Let me try again.
It should work. Yeah, now we see it. Well done. Yeah. Could you please, go to the first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me go to the first. Well, okay, thank you.
As okay, floor is yours.
Yes. As Yang Hong mentioned, I co-authored this issue brief with Constance Pamela from Sianspo, and with support from many experts in the field, and especially from the UNESCO Information for All program. So in summary, the main premise of the issue brief is to highlight that we are approaching a second quantum revolution that builds upon the foundational principles of quantum mechanics and focuses on practical applications through direct control and manipulation of quantum phenomena. And essentially, most of these innovations and applications will be based on existing ICT infrastructure and internet governance issues. And we see some of them emerging. There have been sessions previously done as a precursor to EuroDIG, and this year is the International Year of Quantum Technologies. So I think this issue brief is quite timely and focusing on the human rights dimensions of the governance and ethical and societal issues is quite significant, as opposed to focusing on competitive advantage and atomic strategic autonomy and other less inclusive approaches that might exacerbate inequalities and create more divisions that are based on the digital divide. So the core innovations that we see, and there is quite a lot of hype, is quantum computing, communications, and sensing and networks. And again, as I mentioned, most of these are based on existing ICT infrastructure or creating new types of ICT and digital infrastructure. And why is having an approach or thinking about the quantum revolution important? It's because there is potential transformative impact of the quantum technologies to revolutionize industries such as healthcare, finance, energy, and defense. There's also a lot of global competition where private actors and nations are investing heavily in quantum research to gain strategic and economic advantages. And the emerging quantum economy could give rise to a new economic paradigm with implications for societal and ethical aspects. And with this brief, we want to focus more on the implications and the possible challenges, and which is why we focused on a human rights approach to govern global quantum technologies. So the three main challenges ahead we identified in our policy brief is there is accessibility challenges. We need to ensure equitable access to quantum technologies. There are also governance challenges which need to be addressed, ethical, security, and society implications, and diversity, where bridging talent and gender gaps in the quantum workforce are very critical to address in an anticipatory fashion. And the main premise of our policy brief, our issue brief, is focusing on human rights. So why are human rights essential for global quantum governance? Need, like other digital rights, we need to protect fundamental freedoms. With quantum technologies, the right to privacy may be threatened, particularly in quantum computing, and existing encryption methods might be deemed irrelevant and expose sensitive data and threaten privacy of many actors in our existing systems. So freedom of expression could also be threatened by quantum enhanced communications, which can inhibit free speech and also can be used for surveillance without ethical safeguards. Another reason why we need to center human rights as essential aspects for global quantum governance is that we need to address global inequalities. We already see an emerging digital divide, there's an AI divide, and an emerging quantum divide where access to quantum technology is very uneven, with significant investments and application and research that's very concentrated in a few countries. There are also gender equity issues. The quantum workforce shows stark gender disparities, and 70% of quantum companies have no female senior leaders, for example. We also need to think of the ethical use of transformative technology, because technologies don't happen in a vacuum. There are values and that are associated with technical artifacts, and quantum technologies are no different. And furthermore, we have quantum technologies are dual use, and the applications can be used for societal benefit and also paradoxically for harm. So human rights principles can ensure ethical use, which allow us to balance innovation, regulation with accountability. And fourth, we need to support sustainable development goals, and centering human rights can enhance other indicators and metrics that are more difficult, like inclusivity and global equity, but they also align with SDG 10 and 16, reduced inequalities, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And centering human rights to reduce inequalities and for peace, justice, and strong institutions is quite central to achieving these goals. Global equity is also important, and human rights approach can ensure that the governance of quantum technologies contribute to equitable development rather than reinforcing the dominance of already powerful nations or corporations. And the fifth reason why we need to center human rights for global quantum governance is for anticipation of future risks. When we converge quantum and AI, we highlight that in brief detail in our policy brief. There are potential situations that that could exacerbate biases and ethical challenges inherent in already existing current AI systems. And there are also environmental impacts to consider, where quantum technologies can alleviate environmental impact based on sensing and data and applications, but also they could exacerbate environmental impacts due to the high computing needs and also energy requirements and data centers required to cool to power quantum computers, for example. So those are things we need to consider, and everyone has a right for a clean environment as a human right, economic opportunities beyond the right to privacy and freedom of expression. In terms of our key common recommendations in building a human-centered quantum future, we focused on four main focus areas, and we provided key recommendations. And this is a summary of what's in the policy brief. The issue brief is online, so you can have a chance to look at it in detail. But in summary, we focused on infrastructure investments, raising awareness on policy, and distinguishing the hype and the actual realities of what's happening in the quantum ecosystem. Capacity building is very important as well. Addressing the gender divide by having metrics and indicators to achieve understanding what the issues are, and encouraging more diverse marginalized groups in the development of different aspects of the quantum ecosystem, from governance, from practical applications, from marketing. The ecosystem has a lot of different experts that are needed to ensure that quantum technologies are scaled for public interest use. UNESCO's role is also particularly important in building a human-centered quantum future. And for example, the Information for All programs work can enhance some of the challenges and can be used to leverage advocacy, awareness, and policy, and shape a human rights-centered governance framework for human innovation and sustainable development. And beyond the Information for All program, there are a lot of initiatives within UNESCO that could enhance different aspects that are already existing for building a human-centered quantum future. In terms of tailored actions for key stakeholders, we acknowledge that the quantum ecosystem, the emerging quantum economy, is reliant on different stakeholder groups and requires co-creation with different stakeholders beyond the traditional innovation models where it's just academia, industry, and governments. And we need different experts, civil society. We need to look at other groups or stakeholders that are not considered usually in these processes of developing an ecosystem that supports the public interest and essentially quantum for good. In terms of our final calls to action that we've highlighted in the issue brief, We need to join the efforts to advance human rights-centered quantum governance, and I listed the reasons why. You need to support global equity and partner with international organizations like UNESCO to bridge the emerging quantum divide and ensure inclusive access and awareness of the benefits and challenges of quantum technologies beyond the hype. We also need to foster collaboration, so engaging in multi-stakeholder initiatives such as IGF and the various regional and global IGFs are very crucial initiatives to promote ethical, sustainable innovation in the quantum sector. We also need to raise awareness of the issues and the benefits and advocating for inclusive global policies that are realistic and time-oriented and that essentially protect human rights are very important to ensure quantum advancements benefit all people and the planet and are not only centered on organizations or regions that have a competitive advantage at the detriment of other regions, and especially because a lot of the quantum technology applications are based on existing internet governance issues and ICT infrastructure. It goes without saying that we need to co-create a global ecosystem that is centered on how the internet is supposed to benefit everyone, regardless of geographical position. And fifth, we need to participate in the International Year of Quantum Science and Technologies. There are a lot of initiatives, and I think you can look on UNESCO's site and see how you can get involved and participate, gain some knowledge and see what different innovations, perspectives, and contributions are being made from different actors in the global quantum ecosystem. And thank you for your time. You can scan the issue brief here with the QR code. And thank you again for UNESCO and the colleagues who contributed to the issue brief. And I'll be here for any further questions. I will also join later, later in person. So you can always reach out to me if you see me to ask me further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamira. And this is really substantial sharing on this new technology, quantum, how it's going to impact human rights, how we can manage to harnessing this quantum for advancing humanity and benefiting everyone, benefiting the planet. So I saw the several sessions related to the quantum in this year's EuroDIG. I'm sure the topic will be resonated later on in the entire EuroDIG. Thanks for your interest here. Now I'd like to give floor to Miss Maria de Prestfer, the Digital Affairs Policy and Advocacy Officer from IFLA. And she's going to present ongoing work among the Dynamic Coalition. We are developing new research about how we empower the libraries. And the librarians, the traditional agent of knowledge society, to continue to play a crucial role in advancing the digital inclusion. Maria, could you please take the floor?
Thank you, Shanghong. Thank you also for such a warm introduction. And let me just share my screen very quickly. And can you see my screen? Not yet.
Not yet. Please try again.
Okay, I believe it should be working now.
Yes, it does. Please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Shanghong, for the introduction. And well, as mentioned, my name is Maria de Brastefer, and I work as IFLA, the Digital Affairs Policy Officer. And today in particular, I'm here to talk about an upcoming document, which is a policy brief that is being produced by IFLA in collaboration with UNESCO IFAP. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what this document is about and also how it may serve the internet community. And well, perhaps some of you already know, but well, this is not the first time that IFLA and UNESCO collaborate on documents related to digital inclusion. As Shanghong mentioned, we have had a continuous collaboration between the DC on measuring digital inclusion and DC on public access in libraries. We did think it's important to have a document that can support both member states and other stakeholders in the process of either formulating information-related policies or partnering with libraries to improve digital inclusion efforts at the regional or national levels. And we do understand that this process is not always very straightforward, especially for the individuals, member states, or organizations that have not previously exchanged with library networks in their own countries. And because of that, we want to facilitate this process for them. And more importantly, we also want to show the value there is in partnering with the local library networks. And so, just to talk a little bit about what it is in a nutshell. So as you can see, it is really a series of library and policy recommendations. And so the first one is library policy recommendations from member states on digital inclusion to help them understand, and also how to rely on the global library expertise and infrastructure to respond to common digital challenges. So it really is a means to provide an entry point for policymakers and other stakeholders to begin, or maybe to even deepen their engagement if they already have one, with relevant library systems and perhaps also with national and subnational levels. And then before talking a little bit more about the brief, I also wanted to mention very shortly that, perhaps you already know this, but of course the nature of libraries is changing very rapidly over time. So as of today, we have a library network that extends to over 2.8 million libraries globally. So it's really a growing network. It is also staffed by over 1.6 million people and over 500,000 volunteers across the world. But of course, also libraries have also redefined their spaces and also their approaches for the digital era. And because of that, I would like to mention very briefly some of the cases that we decided to include in the policy brief, but also to showcase how important or has been the role that some libraries have had in terms of digital inclusion in certain countries. So for example, here in the slides, you can see how some photos of a Tunisian library who did a digital skills course promoting opportunities for women at a local level. There have been also other instances where the library's digitization center has provided training and employment for people with special needs, and many, many different cases that have significantly contributing to bridging that digital divide at a local level. And so now just to talk a little bit more about what the brief is about. So the brief is composed by 6 core policy areas, and we decided to choose these core policy areas because we guided ourselves from previous documents from both IFAP and IFLA, but also guiding documents like the Global Digital Compact. And so these 6 core policy areas, they address cross-cutting issues of the digital inclusion landscape, and we agreed upon them, as I said, basing ourselves on IFAP and IFLA Strategic Plan for the upcoming years. And just to talk very briefly about each of the areas, the first one is on access and affordability. And so as you can see, and perhaps you also know it, but libraries in this sense can play a pivotal role by providing free or low-cost access, not just to the internet, but also to devices. So this policy area in the brief explores strategies for expanding library-based connectivity initiatives, and also to ensure that they're both inclusive and sustainable in the long term. And then we also have the learning capacity and development. I think that one's quite straightforward. It talks a lot about digital literacy, knowledge, and overall skills, and how the policy area focuses on a joint enhancement of efforts done by policymakers and librarians. Then there's, of course, multi-stakeholder collaboration, and it talks about how to achieve digital inclusion by doing cross-sector collaboration. Because libraries as community hubs are well placed to lead or participate in multi-stakeholder activities. So because of that, this policy area takes a look at diverse recommendations to achieve successful collaboration on digital inclusion initiatives with the help of libraries. We also, of course, have trust and safety in the digital environment, because we also believe libraries can also contribute to this significantly by providing a safe space for public access to the internet, to their users. And the two last ones, we also think very important: the preservation of information integrity, which has been also a role that libraries have had for a really long time, as they represent an essential infrastructure for promoting and also ensuring information integrity. And finally, of course, also AI and emerging technologies, because as we know, artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies like quantum perhaps are really greatly impacting connectivity and also the digital information environment. And so because of that, we also believe there's a lot of libraries that are already doing in terms of AI, can also, and how can they also help implement initiatives that are also based on, that are human rights respecting, and also to raise awareness about this. And so the policy brief, as you can see, beyond the recommendations that we offered, they also have some tailored actions for each of the stakeholders. And the tailored actions are not just for policymakers, member states, but they're also for library partners, because we do understand, as I mentioned before, sometimes people know the infrastructures there, but perhaps the process of collaborating and making this functional is not very clear. So we realized it was important to include tailored actions in each of these 6 core policy areas, so people know exactly how perhaps this collaboration would look like in these terms. And as I also mentioned very briefly, we have also included some case studies in the product, because we really think it's important to accompany the brief with real life examples on maybe how these collaborations look like in the real life. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to extend too much on it, but I would just like to briefly mention one of these case studies, which is the one that I'm showing in the screen. And this is the case of a rural library in Edenville, South Africa. And so what happened in this case is that as a product of cooperation between the local government, local library, and the Small Enterprise Development Agency, the SIDA, this partnership contributed to both the lending of several hectares of land for local farmers, but also to a training that in this case was designed by the library to support the farmers in growing their business in that region. And we wanted to share it as part of the brief because this initiative was really successful, and we really realized it contributed to creating a lot of opportunities, not just for the people who were initially involved, but also to other individuals, particularly to a lot of young women in the region who are also agriculturists. And the initiative was so successful that to this date, we are proud to note that the library continues to support the cooperative by providing space for farmers to hold regular business meetings, perhaps with other stakeholders. They continue to provide access to ICT equipment such as computers and projectors at no cost. And also the library continues their cooperation with SIDA, for example, by hosting business training sessions for other agricultural stakeholders. And they do regular presentations about their work using the library ICT equipment, and they hold meetings with stakeholder organizations. And so these are just some of the examples of what we think those 6 core policy areas can help perhaps other stakeholders, member states, or even individuals reflect on how we can shape these types of partnerships and collaborations, and also how we can put the global library infrastructure at the service of also of other internet related challenges. And so just before concluding, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the timeline with the brief, because even though the final version of the brief has officially been approved, but it's still going through the final publishing process. So we are hoping to be able to launch it perhaps at the IGF or the WSIS And what we would like to do upon the publication of the brief, of course, is not just to get it out, but also to do some targeted dissemination and outreach. So perhaps organize an exchange with key stakeholders and organizations. Maybe also presentations and webinars where we can provide space for opportunities for dialogues. So maybe spaces where we can actually discuss about these possible partnerships and what they may look like. Perhaps also follow up calls to action. So maybe ensure use of recommendations in national or institutional processes. And the last one, which I think is the most important one, is maybe also from the side of IFLA, we would really like to provide implementation guidance for these recommendations. So maybe develop follow-up tools such as roadmaps, or maybe other documents that are informed by the feedback that we obtain upon the publication of the brief, and sort of to accompany both member states, stakeholders or organizations, but also the library networks that decide to engage in these types of partnerships to make sure that they are successful in the end. Okay, so arriving to the end of the presentation, so I would like to thank you for your attention, and of course I would also like to invite you to keep following other IFLA and IFAP events, as I mentioned, perhaps via the IGF and WSIS, and of course follow our website and socials where we were going to be launching these guiding documents once it is published. So thank you, Shanghong and colleagues from IFAP.
Thank you, Maria, for this excellent presentation. We do see the power and the huge potential of libraries in digital age for advancing global equality and empowering the community and the grassroots. So as you can see from these two issue brief of dynamic coalition, that it's kind of a policy research and tackling the emerging issues and give the policy recommendations. So through UNESCO's network, we are able to sensitize our member states on those important challenges and opportunities, but also we are sharing the good practice, some cases from different countries. It can be duplicated in other countries. So if any members, any researchers, and any participants in this room online, you also perceive a certain topic deserving such attention, please do reach out to us. We can collaborate to develop the new policy research and and then can advocate that in the same way as we are doing today. And thank you again for the two presenters, which showcase the wonderful outcome from this dynamic coalition through this our joint efforts. Now I'm moving quickly to the second part of today's event. We have invited 4 speakers representing members and stakeholders for DC, and to give some strategic sharing of their thoughts and their work and practices in different areas, and to trigger further discussion. And also, I hope before we close, we can have 10 minutes to engage the participant in the room and online. So please feel free to type your comments and questions in the chat, and also prepare to take the floor before we close. So now I go quickly with our panel of the strategic session. Firstly, I'd like to invite Mr. Morten Moyahoff Nielsen, the eGov advisor and the principal research specialist and research line coordinator of United Nations University eGov. Morten, please take the floor. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greatly appreciated this opportunity. So I have 2 types of highlights for my next couple of minutes. One is on data, and the other one is on service design standards for lowering the barrier. But let's start with data collection. If we look at both national and global indicators being collected for measuring digital inclusion, they are leaving some room for improvement. First of all, we see that most data is collected on an annual basis, meaning that things like, have you used the internet in the last 12 months, yes or no, is all that we have to work with as policymakers. This doesn't really narrow down who is digitally included or not. So what we actually have been doing is some research on national indicators, and we see that generally it's a hen and egg sort of discussion. The countries and decision makers that need the most data to pinpoint digital exclusion in their communities are the ones with the weakest data sets. The countries and decision makers that have the smallest challenge, for instance, in the global north, rich countries, they have better data. And when I talk about better data, I'm not just talking about the data quality, I'm talking about geographical and socioeconomic segmented data. As a policymaker, it is essential for us to address this challenge of digital inclusion and exclusion as quickly as possible, considering that a third of the world's population is still not included in a digital sense. So we're talking about 2.4 to 2.8 billion people, the majority of which are women and from lower socioeconomic and educational attainment backgrounds. So this means that for us as policymakers, we must segment our data and we must collect this in a different way. So first of all, we want to know where is the digitally excluded potentially living. So we want geographical segmentation. Just knowing the data for the national context is not enough. So if I'm in Brazil, how do I know where the digitally excluded live if I don't have any geographical segmented data? Then we want gender. Yeah, we want to see, is it a specific gender issue in this location? Because that will impact the way we tailor our initiatives to address the challenge. Similarly, we want to look at age groups. We want to look at any socioeconomic indicators like educational attainment, income levels, etc. And this we may want to complement with some context-specific indicators such as mother tongue languages. Is there any ethnicity issues, etc.? Now, that will give us an ability to pinpoint areas or communities which are excluded and then tailor specific initiatives around that. And we need to do that on a regular basis. It's not enough to do this every 10 years when there's a national census. It needs to be done on a regular basis. So here again, colleagues of mine at UNUE-Gov and our partners in Brazil at CETIC did a policy brief, particularly on this issue, looking at not just supply and the theoretical inclusion, but actually demand-driven data and user-segmented data. And one of the recommendations we came up with is to work, for instance, with the telco industry. So if we link our population database, where we have all individuals, ideally in our communities, registered, we can combine that with address database. We can then, in over 150 countries, link that to people who have a mobile subscription or an internet subscription. Because in 150 plus countries, it is legally required that you have legal identity documents when you get a mobile phone or an internet subscription, and this is reported to the telco regulators. So that gives us an indication of who have what type of subscriptions, obviously in an anonymized sense. But the telcos collect gender, they collect age groups. We can ask them to potentially collect a little bit of extra information. We can then mirror that up with heat maps. So seeing where is the demand of data in our communities in a geographical sense? What are the type of generic IP addresses that are being accessed? Is it for online commerce? Is it for mobile or electronic banking? Is it for government services? So that gives us a more automated and potentially more data-driven approach to measure digital inclusion and then tailor specific initiatives based on this data that pinpoints who are the digitally excluded in which part of our countries or which part of our communities. So that's one recommendation, and I'll put the link to the policy brief into the chat so you have it. The other recommendations I would want to make here is to lower the barrier for accessing government services, for instance, once we are digitally included. We know that the second digital divide is less about the theoretical access to the internet and more about the relative cost of that access. But it's also about understanding how government or the private sector is communicating with us as individual citizens or entrepreneurs. So here again, there's a whole area of work happening in online service design standard that both address sort of web accessibility for those who have different forms of physical or cognitive disabilities, that lowers that barrier. So they can use their technologies to actually access services online through this web accessibility guidelines. But it goes beyond that. The second digital divide is not so much about using the technology, but understanding the content online. So here again, good design standards actually go in and lower the barrier in terms of language use. How do we communicate with people in a simple, everyday, action-oriented way? How do we ensure that there's a certain intuitive design logic to all the different services that governments provide, and how are they built up? Because together, the simplified language use, the look and feel, the intuition of government services will then actually lower that digital barrier, not just for people with disabilities, but also for all individuals, no matter their educational attainment level. So again, there's two elements around that. There's a monitoring and measurement to identify the type of initiatives that we need to tailor to specific groups that are still unfortunately excluded, because a one size, again, does not fit all. And then also, how do we in practice, once people are online, lower the barrier in the way that we design services and communicate with our target audiences. So this is some of the work that we're doing, and two of the sort of clusters of recommendations that we would have in order to achieve the SDGs and also the Global Digital Compact objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for sharing so many good insights perfectly about the nuanced approach in measuring device, including gender device and many others. Without this, we won't be able to put in place tailored policies to eventually help those women, girls, minorities eventually meaningfully connect and access the internet and any other technologies, including quantum, as we mentioned. So now I'd like to move to the next speaker, Ms. Onika Makwakwa, the Executive Director of Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, the co-founder of the Dynamic Coalition as well. So Onika, could you please take the floor? Hello, Onika, are you with me?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. It just took me a second to unmute myself. Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for this opportunity, and also for the really insightful presentations, both Shamira and Maria. I'm gonna, and Martin as well. I'm gonna quickly just get into it since my 5 minutes is already on cue. And, just briefly, the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, we are a multi-stakeholder partnership that is dedicated to advancing meaningful connectivity in the global majority, and making sure also that digital transformation truly serves the majority. That women and girls, rural communities, persons with disabilities, poor people, and others who are often excluded from digital and policy spaces are included. So today I just really want to speak about a key tool for equity in the age of artificial intelligence, and as we look at all these emerging technologies, and that is evidence. And clearly the speakers before me have really outlined this so well in terms of why we need to focus on evidence, right? As AI systems are, the AI systems are only going to be as inclusive as the data and decisions that is behind them. And right now, both remain deeply unequal. From biased data sets to policy frameworks written without local context, there is a risk that emerging technologies will actually deepen the divides that it could otherwise help us bridge, or that we are hoping, would help us bridge. So at GDIP, we see this not only as a technological challenge, but as a governance one. And we believe that the starting point for more, just and inclusive technology systems is really measurement that centers people for the most part. Too often global digital and AI indicators focus on infrastructure or innovation capacity, but say very little about things like affordability, access, or agency as well. They miss the gendered barriers to entry, the cost burdens for rural areas, and the data justice concerns facing marginalized groups that are becoming even more concerning as we move deeper into emerging technologies, especially AI. That's why, at GDIP, we really champion an approach that is evidence-based and equity-driven, and most importantly, participatory. And I'll just give a few examples of some of the practices that we've really adopted through just kind of highlighting some specific examples. We are building on a legacy work that our team has done on developing the Affordability Drivers Index, for example, which used multidimensional lens to evaluate how policy environments support affordable internet access, to later developing pathways for meaningful connectivity. We really hope to see an expansion of this approach and indicators that cover AI readiness and governance, not just access, right? As an example of work that we are undertaking this year, we are expanding on our connected resilience research, where we'll be looking at 8 countries and looking specifically at gendered experiences of meaningful connectivity. And in this research, we actually do both quantitative and qualitative research, but most exciting has been this unique approach of looking at policy ethnography, where we actually evaluate and look at how policies are shaping and responding to gender digital divide specifically. And in conducting this research, we have actually modeled the importance of partnerships as well, which is another key area of just what we bring to this work, and what we hope to see more of is, partnering with local organizations that look at community-based digital experiences and collecting the data alongside with them. These voices are very essential in shaping future regulation, especially on emerging technologies and AI in particular. From highlighting surveillance harms that we can learn from local people to pushing for algorithmic accountability. It's really, I cannot overemphasize the importance of local collaboration. And also, our work through our advocacy as we champion global frameworks that prioritize digital inclusion, like UNESCO's Rome X indicators, and work to adapt them for more actionable country-specific use. The lesson here is actually quite simple. We can't regulate AI in a vacuum. We need data that reflects lived realities of people, frameworks that elevate human rights, and institutions that listen to those who are affected the most. And that's really, really key, because I think the biggest fear that we hear when we talk with people is just the fear of being left behind, but also the fear of a system that's meant to help them that actually ends up bringing more harm. So how do we move forward? First, we must require disaggregated data in all policy processes. You can't govern what you don't understand, and that includes gender, geography, and income-related divide in digital use and harms. Very often we find data being collected, and more it just really baffles me how more and more we still are not finding the kind of disaggregation of the data to be able to, dig deeper into, for example, the gendered experience, how women are experiencing some of these technologies in particular, and what the disparate impact is on certain specific populations. Second, we should support the development of national AI observatories and inclusive measurement coalitions, rooted in regional expertise and not just only looking at global benchmarking. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've been hearing from communities and activists, is that while global benchmarking is really great, it's really important for us to look at regional expertise, but also the local realities are quite important to incorporate in that, which is also why the ethnography approach in the research that we are doing has been really quite helpful in being able to document some of that. Third, we must invest in impact assessment and inclusive sandboxes that give marginalized communities a direct say in shaping some of these rules before they are actually rolled out at scale. That is just really, I think, the big lesson that we've learned is making sure that, we are building nothing for people without them being part of those solutions, whether it's from the technology point of view, but as well as from the policy point of view. So it's quite important to be inclusive. At GDIP, we really believe that inclusion must be the baseline, not the afterthought. And that inclusion is actually about, on online. It's not just about who is online. It's also about how they're able to participate in designing, deploying, and governing the technologies of the future. So they're not invited in just to be consumers of digital technologies, but also they have an opportunity to shape the digital technologies and innovate and create as well. We are at a critical moment, especially with AI, in a way that it could potentially also entrench existing inequalities, or it can be a catalyst for dignity, opportunity, and rights. And the one thing that will change that is how we seize this moment and this opportunity to be truly inclusive, even in our approach as we try to, develop these frameworks around governance of these emerging technologies. And so I think I will just conclude by saying that, let's measure what matters. Let's elevate the evidence, and let's make sure that the future of emerging technologies is built not just for the world, but with the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Onika. What you have said really matters for our conversation. Before I move to the next speaker, I'd like to give a housekeeping announcement. And before we end the session, we like to take a hybrid picture with everyone in the room and online. So I thank our technical support who agree that we'll have all the participants in the room to come to the front, and then we have all the online speaker please to stay and turn on your camera so can take a hybrid picture before we end the session, and that will be shows the exact inclusiveness of our multi-stakeholder approach. So now I'd like to invite Ms. Charlotte Guillaume-Martin, the co-secretary of the Steering Committee on Anti-Discrimination, Diversity and Inclusion from the Council of Europe. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen and show the slides. So because I only have 5 minutes, I've put some QR codes on the slide, so do please feel free to scan, and then you can get a bit more information. So today I would like to introduce two parts of the work stream of the Council of Europe on AI, equality and non-discrimination. The first is the work of a specific expert committee, which is drafting a committee of ministers recommendations, so a soft law non-binding standard, on the impact of AI systems on equality, including gender equality and non-discrimination. And the second is the work of the Council of Europe in the anti-discrimination sector in capacity building programs. So the Council of Europe and its anti-discrimination department have been working on the specific challenges posed by AI systems to equality for quite some time. Today, I'd like to focus on the study which was adopted in 2023 by the CDADI, the Steering Committee on Anti-Discrimination, and the GEC, which is the Gender Equality Commission, on the impact of artificial intelligence systems, their potential for promoting equality, including gender equality, and the risks to non-discrimination. Based on this study, the expert committee was set up to draft a committee of ministers recommendation. And the idea of the recommendation is that it can give very specific policy guidelines to member states of the Council of Europe to ensure not only that the positive potential of AI systems for promoting equality can be harnessed, but also that they can prevent some of the risks to equality which AI systems can engender. So I've set out on the next slide an overview of bias and how it can infiltrate an AI system. And there's various different points at which this can happen. I'd really encourage you to read the study, which gives a very detailed overview of the different mechanisms and different ways in which bias can enter the system. But the headlines of the study are really that bias in an AI system is not just a glitch in an otherwise unbiased system, but it's indeed systemic and inherent in its functioning. And because the sources of bias is not ultimately technological, they can't be resolved using technology alone. So instead, there needs to be quite a comprehensive, policy-driven decision to actively prevent the reinforcing of structural inequalities which can be ingrained in social data. So what are the ways forward? The recommendation is designed to be comprehensive and to give very specific guidance to member states, which also includes stakeholders, so private actors as well. But they're centered around different themes. So the first is introducing preventive obligations, perhaps in the form of a human rights impact assessment throughout the AI lifecycle. So thinking again about these various different points at which bias can enter the system. The second centers around transparency and explainability obligations, and that can reduce power asymmetries which occur between individuals of all different groups who are using AI systems and the providers and deployers of those systems. The third is around public supervision, so how to empower national human rights institutions, equality bodies and data protection authorities to monitor, test and prevent discrimination arising, but crucially doing that in dialogue with civil society, with the public as appropriate. And then finally, the recommendations will center around democratic participation in standard setting and public consultations. So how to ensure that the public are armed with sufficient information to be able to participate in those conversations and to really contribute to the future governance regulation of AI. So part 2 of this lightning talk would be on capacity building programs. So the Council of Europe's Anti-Discrimination Department has set up training programs looking at the impact of AI on discrimination in partnership with equality bodies and other public institutions. The course supports participants to acquire an initial expertise. So it serves as an opportunity to recall the legal framework of anti-discrimination, which applies also to decisions made in the context of AI systems. There are 4 different modules, and the course aims to build a general understanding on AI, algorithmic decision-making, and its impact on equality and non-discrimination. It introduces standards on AI governance and equality and non-discrimination legislation and how that can apply to different types of AI systems. It encourages the participants to reflect on the application of AI in the daily lives of people and the roles of different stakeholders to respond to situations of discrimination and unequal treatment. And then finally, it motivates further engagement, cooperation, and coordination on AI topics between national regulators, public authorities, and other stakeholders, in particular civil society. The EU and Council of Europe joint project is giving equality bodies of Belgium, Finland, and Portugal technical support to strengthen their administrative capacities on the implications of AI technologies in the operations of public administrations. And that's just at present. We hope that that programme will grow and continue to involve different member states of the Council of Europe. To summarise what's involved in that programme, there will be training courses, development and testing of an assessment protocol on claims of discrimination by AI systems, guidelines to engage in national policy discussion on the transposition of European AI standards, and finally, European events for equality bodies and other regulators. So just to conclude and to echo some of the sentiments which have already been shared, clearly digital development and the future of AI systems is a social good that should benefit all and all groups of society, including those who are at risk of discrimination. And also its positive potential must be adequately harnessed. And I am looking forward to hearing about new initiatives. I think the initiatives which you've already heard about have been extremely useful. And so thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for sharing so important program work of Council Europe, which are so much in line with what we are doing at UNESCO and also with this entire dynamic coalition. So I do hope that we can have you further collaboration with us and to share your work in our future events. Maybe you can also help type the link of those work in the chat so we can have better reference. And let's keep in touch on this. Thank you again for your participation. And now, the last but not really the least, I'm inviting two joint speakers representing the industry company. One is Miss Jenny Oliveira, Executive Director, Business Development, Intelligent Devices Group of Lenovo, and Ms. Delaney Gomez-Jackson, the Language Services Manager of Motorola Mobility. I understand both of you are joining us online from North America. It's very late, maybe midnight already, and thank you for your huge commitment and participation. Could you please take the floor and share your screen? Thank you.
Yes, Delaney can share. Sorry, for some reason, unfortunately, my my video was working before, but now it does not seem to be working. So it could be on your side, but it's not working, unfortunately.
Yeah, go ahead with your presentation. We hear you perfectly. I'm asking the technician here to check what happened to your video. Please go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So pleasure to be here with everyone so that we can briefly share about our digital inclusion of endangered indigenous languages initiative. Next. Delaney, next.
I did click next on the slides. Can you not
Okay,
see?
there you go. There you go. To help preserve our human heritage and the stories of indigenous cultures and encourage future generations, Motorola and Lenovo Foundation, we are working to integrate endangered indigenous languages and minority languages into our smartphones. Next. In December 2022, we were honored to participate in the UNESCO event of the Declaration of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages from 2022 to 2032. This UNESCO declaration is an effort to draw global attention to the endangered status of many indigenous and minority languages and mobilize stakeholders to the prevention, revitalization, and promotion of these languages. And as a global company focused on smarter technology for all, we developed this initiative in 2021, and we are proud to be pioneers in this area and being the first OEM to include an endangered Amazon language, Nyegatu, in our smartphones. Next. So while major languages are well represented and were well represented, in 2020, we identified a big gap in the representation of indigenous and minority languages in smartphones globally. And we thought that we could help towards bridging some of that gap. We have been working with UNESCO, scholars in the field of linguistics, nonprofit organizations, but most importantly with communities that speak minority and endangered indigenous language to include some of them in our products. Over the past years, we have worked on including endangered indigenous and minority languages from Amazon and Brazil, India, the United States, New Zealand, and Italy in our smartphones. So because of that, users can now choose to use their Motorola smartphones in Nyegatu and Kaingang from Latin America, Cherokee from North America, Kangri and Maori from Asia Pacific, and Latin from Europe. We have also developed a first-time keyboard on Kuvi from India, and now those users are able to type and send messages to their family and friends in their native language. Now, Delaney.
Great, thank you, Janine. We also published the Hello Indigenous white paper in cooperation with UNESCO through the Indigenous Languages on Mobile partnership. It is an important milestone in this journey as this white paper provides technical processes on endangered languages digitization to be shared globally across the industry. With approximately 7,000 endangered languages in this world, we can't do this work alone. The goal is for us to share our work and best practices with the community and hopefully inspire other companies towards the cause. Last year, we had the privilege of working alongside esteemed scholar Paul Vidasat from the Free University of Bolzano in South Tyrol, Italy, in crafting words in the Latin language to localize our smartphones' user interface. Before that, Latin's largest dictionary had 15,000 words. In this initial phase of the Digital Inclusion Project, Latin translators and the professor localized over 200,000 words. According to Professor Paul Vidasat, mobile phones are the pencil of the 21st century. He is also a believer that language is the carrier of a culture and that each minority language and each language of the world contributes to making the world richer. In addition to fulfilling the ESG goals of UNESCO, Motorola and Lenovo Foundation, the Digital Inclusion Initiative allows, through open sourcing its data and corpus, researchers and developers to further contribute towards revitalization in new areas, including voice, machine translation, AI applications, and others. And we'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation on our Digital Inclusion Initiative.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jenny, for this interesting presentation. It's so inspiring to know your huge efforts to make it linguistically accessible through your technology. That's a crucial part of the digital inclusion we are tackling here in the Dynamic Coalition. So now I think we have a couple minutes for some question and answers. Whether someone in the room, please take the floor, or someone online, and you can also signal, raise your hand, use that function. So we are still having a few minutes to tackle some questions before we take the picture. Anyone here? Yeah. Don't be shy. I mean, the EuroDIG is the open forum. We are here. Everybody should talk before we leave. So yes, please, sir, go ahead. Could you please introduce yourself briefly?
You hear me? Yes. So this is Esteban Sanz. I'm from the European Commission. So thank you so much for all these presentations and these reports. We will make sure that we will take a close look at the European Commission to all these elements that you have put on the table. You know that we are rapidly approaching the WSIS +20 review. This will be essentially a UN resolution of the General Assembly, relatively short, but it would still need to include, at least this is how we feel in the EU, language on digital inclusion and emerging technologies, AI, etc. So this is a question or a general comment for the whole panel. What language, what specific elements would you like to see reflected in the WSIS +20 resolution related to digital inclusion and the emerging technologies? It has to be succinct, it has to be clear language, priorities. What would those be for the panelists? Thank you.
So anyone else? So you lost me a bit. It's okay. I'm just reinforcing the importance of multilingualism in the contribution to the WSIS +20 review. We hope this issue should be further highlighted in the post-WSIS 20 process and also in the implementation process of Global Digital Compact. Anyone else from maybe someone from online? Anyone online to raise a hand? Or maybe a lady, someone? A comment, some thoughts? Yeah. Okay. So we are finishing, right? Okay, so without further comments from all of you, I believe that our conversation will be continued even in the following up session, starting at 11. UNESCO is having another session focusing on the indicator of internet universality and gender equality. All of you online room can continue to stay. And before that, please allow us to take a hybrid picture. And could everybody come to the front with me? And also, I invite all the participants online, please turn on your camera so we take a hybrid inclusive picture. And with your permission, we might use this for the UNESCO's website and our social media promotion in the future communication. Yes, please come with me. We quickly take one picture with